what comes to mind for you?
Calories, energy in the tank, food as a source of energy, for your, athletic endeavors, or even to get your body through the day. If you're not fueling up, you could have like low blood sugar throughout the day. So when you're trying to work, you're in a fog, or just very uncomfortable.
Sure, absolutely. And what does the word, like, taken out of the context of nutrition, like, what does fuel mean to you? Like, what comes to mind immediately?
The substance engines need to work and go forward. So like super important, fundamental, how we get machines to work.
So basically the source of power for energy.
Yes, the thing that
Working.
propels the device or the body forward. Like no fuel, you have an inert, entropy laden object.
So something that is necessary towards progress.
Necessary. Like produces momentum. Fuel produces energy. Would that be right to say? Or is fuel energy? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, if we were getting into physics, right, stored, potential energy that's contained within the fuel, then converted, right? And that's essentially what food is for us. Like the calories that we consume from food are converted into glycogen and things that give us energy. So I think this is directly in contrast the way that people would traditionally approach something called, when we think of the word diet. So when I say the word diet, what immediately comes to mind?
Immediately, I don't know why I think of like, fad diets, all of them, all the fad diets that we've all tried, that we've all been on, that come and go and repeat themselves.
Absolutely. So what would like an example of a fad diet be?
Oh, fad diet. Remember when Atkins was really big, like for keto? So it was just 0 carb and go crazy, like eggs, bacon, cheese, every meal, like let's go. So I don't know, that one jumped to mind because I'm sure Atkins back in the day, like everyone did.
Yeah, everyone's had an experience with it. I think that, one of the common themes to most diets is they focus around this concept of limiting food intake or restricting it, right? And I think for a lot of people, which we've discussed prior, is that this sort of restrictive binary thinking leads to eventual overindulgence, right? So traditionally, when people are on a diet, they are trying to lose weight. But in reality, diet just means the food that you eat, right? But our cultural association with the word is restricted eating, right? So a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. Now, with diets, the mentality is often very binary. You're on a diet or you're off a diet. Now, we've talked about the concept of the spectrum of adherence, right? Where you can be degrees of on the diet or off the diet generally. But most diets ask you to eat less food. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Traditional diets, it's eat less food. It's also calorie counting, lots of like rice cakes and fat-free this. All the 80s diets. Tab.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what I think a lot of these different approaches have in common is they're focused so much on what you can't have as opposed to what you can have, right? And working with people and also understanding psychology, we know that when you restrict people and they feel constrained, they're more likely to go outside the rules of the program, right? And that's why we, encourage flexible dieting or just tracking food to know that you're within the budget that you've allotted, but you can still have things that you want, so you're not very restricted, right? So this idea of reduced eating, have to adhere to strict rules, this is surrounding this larger concept of diet culture. So when I say diet culture, what comes to mind for you?
Oh my gosh, like hundreds of books and specials and infomercials I've absorbed over my entire life. Like just lots of voices, lots of competing diet fads, people always being on a specific diet, lots of juice cleanses and like celery soups. There's a lot when you say diet culture, like a lot of imagery.
Sure, and I feel like based on what you're saying and sort of your emotion behind it, it's relatively negative, the connotation.
Yes, absolutely negative, very fatty with the D's. People not ending up with results, people always on them in a way, myself included at times, that's like in and of itself confusing and stressful because there's a lack of consistency. Dropping the newest fad diet, dropping an old fad diet for a new one, and a mess. Yeah.
Absolutely. What I think this kind of hints to sort of the on and off, the binary approach. So generally that, what I find with clients and observe through reading and study is that most diets are reductive. It says, okay, what can't you have, right? You used to be able to eat everything you want, and now people are immediately focused on what they can't have, right? Like the first day people are that they start dieting, a lot of people that haven't done it before start to freak out, when in reality, they've probably only cut their food options by about 10%, right? So instead of focusing on the 90% that they can have, they're focused on the 10%. They start to panic. They say like, I can't do this forever. Things like this type of sort of negative reinforcement and talk, and then they just give up, something like that. So one pattern is reductive thinking, feeling deprived, overindulgence, right? Oh my God, I can't have ice cream for the next month. I'm going to go out this weekend and binge on ice cream, something like that, right? Or food obsession with things that people think that they can't have. Although we know that you can still be on a diet and have things like foie gras or something like that, right? So this traditional mindset is saying basically what you can't have as opposed to what you can have, right? So one of the common things like that I've heard from people is like, oh, I wish I could eat that, but I'm on a diet. Have you heard somebody say that before?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with carbs
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother, we could have hours of conversation about how carbs aren't evil, but yeah, absolutely. Like, oh, I would have that bread, but I'm keto right now, or I'm avoiding carbs, right? So this is the dieting mindset. So let's frame that as the traditional approach. Let's talk about another option here. Oops, let's go back one. There we go. Fueling, right? So when we're dieting, we're focused on what we can't have. Fueling instead takes the onus off of the nutrition component and asks a further question: what is the purpose of the food, right? In the dieting mindset, the food is the end all be all, right? It's what can you eat for pleasure or just to feel full. Fuel asks, what is the purpose of the food? And now you alluded to this earlier when you were saying fuel is to provide energy for something, right? So we assume that if you are trying to be healthier, you're probably doing some form of exercise. And if you're a human, you're probably moving around in some way. Therefore, you need to fuel yourself. So the fueling approach says, not what can't you have, but what foods make the most efficient fuel. Now, if you're driving a Ferrari, you're not going to put 87 octane in it, right? You're going to put 91. And that's sort of the ideology behind fueling, right? So if you're working out really hard in the gym, you're not going to go get your carbohydrate source from a bunch of Doritos. You're probably going to choose something that is a little bit more whole foods based or something like that, right? So this fueling approach takes care of a lot of the food choice options, the amount of food, things like that, and also takes the focus away from what you can't have to what can you have to best suit your goals, right? So have you heard of like an abundance mindset before?
No, I've not heard.
So an abundance mindset, I'm sort of morphing it into our purposes here, but abundance mindset is essentially that, those who believe too strongly in scarcity will create scarcity for themselves. But people that, seek opportunity will unconsciously find opportunity or create opportunity because they believe it to be there, right? So I see it more as an extension of, you're subconsciously looking for something, you're going to find it in some way because you're going to evaluate scenarios in a way that's aligned with your belief system. So in this mindset, it's not what can't you have, but what can you have? So you don't have as much of that feeling of being restricted, right? And there's a larger purpose you're serving to the food as opposed to just the consumption of it. It's to fuel the workouts or have this larger goals. So your food choices are aligned with your mindset, which is to be healthy, right? So a common question for orienting your food is, what food choice best suits my goal? Should I eat that Pop-Tart or should I eat these egg whites and this oatmeal, right? Not to say one is better than the other. The question is, which one is more aligned with your goals? Have you ever had that kind of like internal conversation before?
Probably not on such a specific level. Or I would say that dialogue has started working with you because this is the first time I've had a specific macronutrient breakdown, and we've had discussions about, how I'm eating and what balance to help fuel my gym workouts.
Sure. So that reorientation has happened for you. We haven't consciously talked about this, but I think it's kind of in the works. primarily because you're so focused on that performance in the gym, right? We
Yes.
use that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, yes, absolutely. Especially when it comes to, carbohydrates. So my, before I was doing some strange version of keto, that's not the point. The point was, it was this phobia of carbohydrates. And now I think where I'm mindfully eating them with the plans you've helped me set up with to fuel my workouts and seeing increased performance. Like, these carbs are going towards this deadlift, and the deadlift will be better because of the carbs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a good feedback loop that's getting built there, right? So you're crediting sort of your performance in the gym, which you enjoy, and get another positive feedback loop to the nutrition that you put in your body. So then you're reinforcing that good behavior. Absolutely. So a couple questions that really align this food as fuel is, one, you must be mindful, right? You must be paying attention to what you're eating. But when you're looking at food options, say you're out at a barbecue, and there's some grilled chicken and salads and things, but then there's also pasta salad and a bunch of Doritos and some ice cream. It's not whether any of those foods are good or bad, but it's which choice is best aligned with my goals. If your goal is to stuff your face and enjoy that pleasure in the moment as much as possible, then I would go for the Doritos and the ice cream. That's a no-brainer. But if you have longer term goals, or you have a workout coming up or recovering from a workout, it may behoove you to choose the leaner protein, vegetables, and maybe a more complex carbohydrate option. So it's also not putting you in a position where it's like you can't have that. It's just, what choice would you like to make? It's very empowering, right? The other question that can come up for people, because this is common, right? We're either bored, we're stressed, or we're tired. Is food what I really need right now? Right? When we head to the kitchen, to the pantry, am I actually hungry? Is that what I need right now? Do I need to refuel right now? Did I have an extra hard workout? Do I need a few hundred extra calories? Or am I just stressed, or am I tired? It asks you to evaluate these questions, right? Because if your car has a flat tire, you don't put more gas in it, right? So you need to identify what the actual problem is. Both of these questions require you to be mindful, right? And we've worked a lot about being mindful about our food choices. But if you are, these two questions can solve a lot of problems. Is this choice that I'm about to make aligned with my goals? And if I'm feeling like I want food, is food, and it may be outside the time of a planned meal, is food what I really want right now?
Right.
Have you ever had similar conversations with yourself?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, especially working with you, but I think identifying, sometimes there's like a need just to ingest something, and then I kind of take a moment to be like, oh wait, like a beverage would be fine right now. Yes, ideally water, but I'll just have like a Coke Zero, versus like, maybe I hadn't put that thought into it, just like starting to eat something that's, like you said, like, oh, I'm not really hungry.
Yeah, 100%. And look, we know there's no issue with diet soda when consuming it or anything. And I think also what that's doing is giving you a moment of pause.
Right.
And then you can really reevaluate, because due to the way that we grew up, the fact that food is damn delicious in a lot of cases and also distracts our brain in pleasurable ways, food becomes a very efficient coping mechanism for stress, anger, sadness, things like that. So we need to be conscious of what true hunger actually is and when we're experiencing it. Now, I know you're already sold on this and you're like, I will look at food as fuel for the rest of my life. But there's a few things to be conscious of in this, right? So food obviously is fuel at a very basic level, but we're not eating twigs and berries here. Food is, as I said, damn delicious. It also has a social and cultural element. We have holidays in which we enjoy food. Food is a way that we connect with other people, and the calorie content and macronutrient percentages of food may not be the primary factor in its consumption. It could be sitting down with people that you care about, enjoying that time, enjoying a food that's emotionally meaningful to you. So you don't want to completely exclude that experience from your life, but you also don't want to be all the time, right? We don't want to become sort of hitched to our more base desires and just like immediate gratification. So it's a balance, but to remember that you're not a robot. Food is not always fuel, right? So identify those moments of social and culturally significant meals, birthdays, holidays, and enjoy them as you go through. So basically, don't be that person. So one way that we kind of look at this is what we call the 80-20 rule. right? So 80% of the time you're on point, 20% of the time you're enjoying food that may be a little bit outside the bounds of normal. It might not be the most ideal fuel, but it's enjoyable to you. And I think you do a good job of this, right?
Yes, I think I do. Like I save my calories for a steakhouse dinner on Saturday night, and yeah, and blew it out. Like yes, like not what I normally eat, satisfying, but still within my budget for the day.
Yeah. And with, I mean, I think that's the most important part, right? Just making sure you have that balance between the two things. So all this being said, what are the big takeaways from this for you?
Reconceptualizing my relationship with food, people's relationship with food into a healthier way. Like food is something that can support you and sustain you, especially if you have any sort of like fitness goals. And that's it. Just trying to like ask these questions so you can form like a better relationship with it. Myself included, and people in my family, a lot of people have had like very complicated negative relationships with food, but unlike other substances, we have to have it. Like it's a like basic building block of life. So just trying to think about it better, have a better relationship with it.
Absolutely. I think constantly, like anything, we want it. For some reason, we accept complexity in certain areas of our life, but not others. So people want food to be so simple because it seems so natural to eat. But we also have to accept that like commercial production of food and the enhancement of it artificially has created something that our biologically we're not necessarily aligned with, and our palates are not aligned with. So we've created these hyper palatable foods that require constant monitoring so we don't overindulge, right? And then we see these anecdotes or hear these anecdotes about these very rare people that seem to be able to eat, these paleo diets without any stress. It's, we know that that's probably a misnomer at best. But yeah, I think accepting that our relationship with food is always going to be complicated and always require some level of attention, but the payoff is so worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Like I would say I've enjoyed eating more since we started working together, because not saying I'm hungry all the time, but I appreciate food more. When you can just like, when you're just letting yourself eat whatever you want, it sort of loses meaning, sometimes even loses flavor. And for a lot of people like me, it's going to eventually hurt your self-esteem and well-being, mental well-being. So being selective, making myself make smarter choices, I think has overall enhanced actually my enjoyment of food.
Which is an awesome benefit that most people wouldn't think of, where controlling your eating is actually going to make you enjoy food more when you go back to it. It's just about getting over that period of time where you're able to enforce that with yourself. Yeah. Amazing. Jeremiah, any last questions about what we talked about?
No, super good. Like get the message out there. It's important that people just start to like dig deep, ask some questions about the relationship with food. Usually for a lot of us, it's looking at patterns in our childhood, in our life. And I believe everyone can have a healthy and healthier relationship with food. So eating does not result in shame, guilt, or depression, but can be an empowering process.
I love that. I couldn't think of any better way to end it. That's amazing. Well, thank you very much as always. We're going to connect Friday because we got big things to talk about this week.